Good morning, everybody. This is Jason Gaszak, and you're listening to Unfiltered Radio Show. And if this is your first time here, I'd just like to let you know what Unfiltered is all about. I am a pastor out in St. Clair, Missouri, of Roots Church, and this is a platform for me to be able to talk about social, political, and biblical topics in an unfiltered way. And I have been in this series called God and Country for the last 11 weeks, and pretty much every week, with the exception of a couple, I've kind of recapped what those messages have been, and I've kind of gone a little bit deeper, and then also answered some questions that people may have had over the topic. Today, I'm going to do something completely different, and the reason why is I just feel like I need to share a message that I shared with our team on Tuesday night, all of our volunteers. And so here in just a minute, I'm going to talk about that, and I'm going to talk about how I think it's going to be very encouraging for many of you listening today. But first, I want to just say, if you have any questions or comments, you can text me directly at 314-924-4215. Maybe you have a question about the show. Maybe there's a topic that you would like me to speak on or talk about, give my opinion on, or give some biblical advice on, whatever that may look like. Again, that number is 314-924-4215. That's the first thing I want to say. The other thing is last night, my wife and I went out on a little date. As we try to do every week. We normally do that on a Friday, but this weekend we're going to be out of town with some friends, and we've been wanting to see that movie that everybody's talking about called The Sound of Freedom. This is a movie about a gentleman who rescues some kids. He finds these pedophiles, and I think from the movie anyway, it says that one of his friends was wanting to quit that was helping him because they weren't rescuing kids, and I think he got a little bit, convicted of that, and he kind of took it a little bit further. But I just want to tell you that this movie has caught so much grief because of what it's about. And it got me really thinking about what is going on in our world. And first of all, it is just extremely sad that there are people, men and women, that are okay with the fact of stealing children of all ages and then selling them or using them for sex or like real slaves working or both for that matter, that these kids are taken away from their parents all over the world, not just all over the world this happens. And I'm just watching this movie, and it's so heartbreaking, and I hope you go see it because that's the other side of it. Hollywood does not want people seeing this film. They don't want the truth to come out. Disney did not want the truth to come out. Amazon did not want the truth to come out. Netflix did not want the truth to come out. It's insane to me, and it got me thinking about how many people that are so up, business leaders, movie people, whatever you want to call them, directors, filmmakers, people like Disney and Hollywood that make these films, they don't want the truth to come out. And what I didn't realize is that this movie was made literally 5 years ago, but they've hit a roadblock everywhere they've turned to get this out into theaters. And finally, the door opened up. And when it got to be in theaters, it only got to be in a few theaters, and they would put them in the smallest theater in the theater. So whatever room had the smallest amount of seats, that's where it would put the movie. And I got to tell you, when my wife and I went last night, man, it was basically out of about 8 theaters that we were looking at, it was dang near sold out on every single one of them, unless you wanted to sit in the very, very front with your head way up in the air, and we didn't want to do that. And so thankfully, we ended up finding a place, and we watched it, and it was excellent. What an excellent movie this was to talk about what is going on in our country right now, and to think that this was 5 years ago what was happening. And of course, here we are 5 years later, and obviously it's much worse than what it was then. And this is why the message needs to get out there about how all of us can do something about it by one, going and seeing the movie, two, sharing your thoughts on the movie, and then donating or contributing or doing something to help end slavery, sex trafficking. What I will tell you, at Roots Church, I did catch a lot of grief because there was something that I wanted to do that was very different in our organization, but I didn't want to just ask people for more money. And so I thought, you know what I'll do is I'll just come up with some cool designs on some shirts and jackets and sweatshirts and hoodies and stuff like that, hats, and I'll just create what I would call my own product line, my own clothing line. Now, I don't create, the only thing we do is the designs. The clothing we get from different resources or whatnot, but we call it the JG Apparel. And, I caught a lot of grief about this because, the pastor has his own clothing line. And no, not really. It's just my own designs that we sell. And what I told everybody is I said, well, how cool would it be to, you give money, you buy this clothing that is cool and coolly designed. Some of it has, good sayings on it, things that I say regularly. It may have a scripture on it, whatever it is. And 100% of the proceeds would go to an organization that of my choice. And the organization that I choose was an organization that helped abolish slavery in all facets. And that organization is A21 right now. Now, we're going to probably pick a different one. It's still going to do the same thing as far as sex trafficking goes, abolishing slavery, sex trafficking, whatever it is. And there's multiple ones out there doing this. But they're the ones that I thought of first because I know the person that is in charge of it, the one that started it. I know the people that support it, and I trust it. And so I'm like, man, this is something we can do as a church where, one, you're getting something for your money. You're getting a shirt or a sweatshirt or a hoodie or a hat or whatever it is. You're getting something. You're paying for it. But in return, 100% of what you're paying for goes to this organization or to a organization that helps abolish slavery. And after watching this movie, it just solidifies why I chose that. It is so sad to see how many children that are being taken from their parents at a very young age, especially young girls, that are being used and abused sexually by men and women all over our country. And the statistic last night was the United States was the country with the most demand. Our country, the United States, which then tells me we have a super amount of sick, perverted, demented people living in this country. I mean, I am furious to know that there are businessmen, wealthy men that have a lot of money that is willing to pay for a young girl who's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, whatever age, that they are willing to pay to do sexual things with them. It's just sick and perverted. And to think that there are people out there that think this is okay. I'm just appalled by it. I'm hurt by it. And so all the more, this is the reason why the product that I put out in our church, specifically that I enjoy having fun with, coming up with designs, 100% of the proceeds go to help abolishing slavery, to help rescue children, boys and girls, all ages, from this nonsense. And the good news is, on July the 30th, I am unveiling our God and Country series line for JG Apparel. It's God and Country. There's, I believe there's 8 different designs that we have created, that I have created, my team has created, and you will be able to get that on July 30th if you come to Roots Church. So I encourage you to do so because it's going to be, there's some cool stuff that we are coming up with. And it's very patriotic, it's very godly, but yet 100% of the proceeds will go to abolishing sex, slavery, or just slavery in general. And so it's a great cause. And last year, we gave away $30,000 to do this. We raised $30,000 to do this through selling the clothes. 100% of the product, 100% of the proceeds go to this. It is for a good cause. It has nothing to do with me. It just gave me an opportunity to do something fun and for people to buy and wear, but yet all the money goes towards it. So I wanted to start the show with that because this movie, Sound of Freedom, is amazing. And guess what? The slogan in there is God's children are not for sale. God's children are not for sale. And trust me, folks, the wrath of God is going to come one day to these sick, demented, crazy, insane people that think it's okay. Listen, you're listening to Unfiltered with Jason Gaszak. When we come back, I'm going to share a message with you or a topic with you of what I share with my dream team, and it's going to be encouraging. We'll see you here in just a minute. All right, well, we're back from the break. I hope you're still with me. I hope you actually share this. You know, I have a Facebook page. I have social media. I don't do really much of Twitter, but I do Instagram, Facebook. You go to my page, Jason Gaszak. It's a public page, and I primarily do a public page for the simple fact that I don't want to follow people. I don't want to see people's stuff, honestly, but I want to be able to put content out there and encourage someone any way that I can. So you can follow me on there. I encourage you to do so. I have a lot of followers these last couple months. So go on there, go to my YouTube page, Jason Gaszak, YouTube, and you can go back and listen to any of these radio show podcasts. And from time to time, we put some short videos on there, and we're working more and more on it. It's a brand new page, so there's not a lot on there right now. But if you subscribe to it, it'll email alert you when something has been posted for your convenience. So, any case, so on Tuesday night, this past week, about once a quarter, we meet with all of our volunteers. We call those volunteers the Dream Team. And usually what that message is about is, we have a lot of fun. We feed them. We honor them. We thank them. We value them for serving in the church. We have right at 300 volunteers in our church. And trust me, it takes an army of people to do what we do week in and week out, and we're so grateful for them. And on this night, we do worship, we do prayer, and then I speak a special message to the volunteers of what I feel like God's speaking to me about to encourage them. And since we're in this, living in a society right now with a lot of negativity, I thought, wow, in October, November, I'm going to do 8 weeks of the book of James. I'm going to teach on the book of James, which is the half-brother of Jesus, who literally gives us a book of instruction on how to live a Christian life, especially in our world today. And I just got to thinking about how discouraging life can be, how many people are going through so much stuff, and sometimes it feels completely overwhelming, that you can't breathe, that you just struggle with life. And I'm what I call a mouth breather. So if I was under the water and my mouth was under the water, but my nose was above it, I feel like I would still drown because I have such a hard time just breathing through my nose. But there are times where you feel like that in life with problems. And when you're talking about volunteers, you're talking about serving, you're talking about giving time and sacrificing your time for other people at whatever level that is. There may be many of you that serve and volunteer at other places. Maybe it ain't a church, but maybe it's at the Agape House. Maybe it's at the Salvation Army. Maybe it's around Christmas at a food bank, whatever it is. Or maybe it's at the hospital or wherever you serve and volunteer. There may be times where you have lost your passion or lost your enthusiasm because of the stuff that you're going through. And so the title of my message was, Have You Lost Your Zeal? Well, zeal it's definitely a church word, and that means enthusiasm. Have you lost your enthusiasm for serving? And I do believe there have been people that have lost that because of the crap that they go through, actually. And you need to know that it's human nature to avoid things that we don't like. For instance, exercise, healthy foods, people or relationships. And sometimes we even avoid people that dress and look like they exercise and eat vegetables, if you know what I'm saying. And there are times when we avoid things we don't like and it won't hurt us. But then there's times that we avoid things that we don't like that actually can hurt us. And an example of that is going to a scary movie. I avoid going to scary movies, and trust me avoiding those is not going to hurt me. But there are other things that we can avoid that can hurt you. And this might surprise you because I'm a pastor, and you think all pastors are just, they're up on this pedestal and they do everything right and they don't have any issues and they just agree with everything that, that's in the Bible and blah, blah, blah. Well, I mean, we're not on pedestals, and we're human beings, and we have problems just like everybody else. We're broken just like everybody else. And so this probably won't surprise you if you know me at all, but there are statements in the Bible that I don't like. And this particular statement is a question that is very relevant to all of us, and it's an important answer to the question. But I don't like the answer, and I bet you're not going to like the answer either. So listen, don't be mad at me because I don't like it either. I'm just the messenger. But the question is, what do we do when there's nothing we can do? Because there are going to be things right now that we do not like, but there's not much that you can do about it. I mean, that happens to me a lot. And I know there are many of you listening right now that are going through something right now that is not easy. You didn't choose it, but for some reason, it's chosen you. There are things, though, that you have done. And because you've done something that might be wrong, there's a consequence for that. But there are many times that things happen without us choosing it. And so you begin to feel like giving up, and you've lost your passion or your enthusiasm for what you're doing in life. Again, whatever that thing is, I don't know, only you do. But there's a person in the Bible, I talked about him a minute ago, the half-brother of Jesus. His name is James. He comes along, and he's going to give us some advice. And when you look at the advice, you think, man, this is kind of passive. It's kind of insensitive, actually. I mean, James, how do you know what I'm going through in my life? He doesn't know, but yet for some reason, he still gives advice. And you may be thinking the very same way right now. You don't know what I'm going through. You don't know the hurt and the pain and the heartache that I'm going through. But yet, you're going to give me advice? And it does sound crazy, but here's the thing. What might even be crazier is to not take his advice. And the reason why is because you got to remember a couple things. One, he is the brother of Jesus. He led a church in Jerusalem for 30 years after Jesus was resurrected. He also called Jesus Lord. And you got to remember, this is the half-brother of Jesus. I mean, most of us, if our brothers said we were their master, we would probably beat them up. But James did not. He submitted to his brother, who was Lord, and he led a church for 30 years after Jesus left. And so James has a lot more street cred than you might realize, because he was leading this church of Jewish people who were followers of Jesus, which, is considered blasphemous. And the poor people in the church were not even taken care of by the temple. They were all ostracized by the temple or from the temple, and the list goes on and on. And so as a matter of fact, it was so bad for this group of Jesus followers that Paul actually would travel around the Mediterranean rim to collect money from Gentile Jesus followers to take back to Jerusalem to help Christians because they were actually so poor. And so James is the person that led them through all this. James was surrounded by and responsible for a community in crisis. That community to me sounds like my church, and probably every other church in America, who has people coming that are jacked up, who are broken, who mess up, who have pain in their life. And maybe that's you. And so this message, this talk today, which I'm doing something a little different. I'm not talking about politics. I'm not talking about social issues. I'm talking about a biblical thing that James is teaching us in life that all of us are going to struggle with. All of us are going to go through tough times. There's nothing you can do to stop it. I mean, for me personally, I feel like I have way more hard times than most people. And I've even asked God, why? Okay, God, I know I'm going to have tough times, but why in the world do I have 3 times as many as everybody else? Because can I just have like 25%, not 75%? Of course, I never heard back from God because, well, that's just the way it goes. I have to endure what comes my way. even when I don't choose it. And so we're going to look in the book of James, and James is going to tell us what to do. He's going to tell me what to do, and he's going to tell you what to do. So when we come back from this break, I hope you come back. I'm going to give you the answer to the question of what do we do when we don't know what to do. You're listening to Real Talk Radio, Unfiltered, right here on 93.3. All right, let's jump back in. Thank you for coming back on the radio with me. And I'm sure there's many of you that want to hear what James has to say when it comes to what do we do when we don't know what to do. He says in James 1:2, "Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way," which means when, not if, but when troubles come of any kind come your way. The Greek word for when is surprised, whenever you're surprised by these trials. So in other words, you get a phone call, unexpected phone call about a problem. Maybe you get an unexpected phone call from the school about your child. Maybe it's an unexpected phone call from the doctor about your health or a test result. Whatever it is, when troubles of any kind come your way, it says to consider. It means to adjust or reframe or rethink. Whatever that is, consider it an opportunity for great joy. Wait a minute. You're telling me that when problems come, a surprised problem comes, I wasn't expecting it, I wasn't ready for it, and I sure the heck didn't ask for it. You're telling me that I have to consider it an opportunity for great joy? Now you know why you don't like the answer to the question a minute ago. Because that just doesn't it seems insensitive that you're telling me, James, that whatever I'm going through, my hurt, my pain, that I just got to consider it an opportunity for me to be happy. Well, the reason why, he says, is because, verse 3, "For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow." So your trials actually expose the authenticity of your faith. Or you could say your trials expose the authenticity of your confidence in God. And so James is telling us, whether we like it or not, there is joy in discovering how real our faith really is. Even though I wouldn't sign up for it, even though you wouldn't sign up for it, we are confronted with the authentic or lack of faith. And it's funny how some people teach on this subject of faith. A lot of people will teach you that faith is how we get God to do stuff for us. No, that's not true. They also teach that faith is some type of superpower. No, that's not true. What faith is, it is a confidence that God has already done something, but we just haven't seen it yet. Faith is a response to God knowing what he promises to say, or what he promises he'll say. So when trouble comes of any kind, consider it an opportunity for joy, because you know your faith is being tested and it demonstrates something and produces something. Well, what does it demonstrate? Well, it demonstrates whether or not your faith is real. I mean, think about it. When you go through a tough time and you say you're a Christ follower, you say you have the faith to believe whatever it is. So when that tough time comes, your trial demonstrates whether or not you really do have real faith. What it produces in you is endurance, or many of you have heard the word perseverance. The word endurance or perseverance simply means the ability to hold up under pressure or stress. And that's what perseverance is. These trials exercise our faith. Faith is a muscle, and you already know that when you exercise a muscle, it gets stronger. Well, that's what faith does. The more you use faith, the stronger it gets, and the more easier it is to get through those tough times. Verse 4 says, "So let it grow, for when your endurance is fully developed." Well, the thing we want removed is the thing that God has chosen to use. And what we end up trying to do is pray it away, but God's using it. The question is, what are you praying for? Well, that exact thing you're praying about right now, you want it to change. And so, unfortunately, it has your undivided attention. It's something you focus on a lot. And maybe you haven't prayed in a long time, but now you're praying. Why? because that's what trials do. They get us to exercise our faith. And praying is exercising faith for asking God to help us through something. But James says, listen, don't shortchange the process. Don't quit the fight. Here's what he says. He says, the reason why I want you to do this is because you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. And James knows how challenging this is going to be for all of us. How in the world can something good come from something bad? So if you cannot imagine to find joy in your trial, then James tells you to do this. He said, okay, if you can't find the joy in your trial, then do what verse 5 says. If you need wisdom, ask our generous God and he'll give it to you. Now, listen, if you're like me, I don't want wisdom when I'm going through a tough time. I want relief. I want the pressure to come off of me. I don't need the wisdom. What about you? Do you feel that way? I mean, God will allow you to breathe. God will allow you to breathe. And when, I should say, will God allow you to breathe or get above the water? That's what I want to know. But here's the deal. God will always answer your prayer of wisdom. He will always answer your prayer when it comes to wisdom. And then once you get the wisdom, you'll have the perspective you need to get through what you need to get through. He goes on and he says, I'm not going to rebuke you for asking, but when you do ask, be sure that your faith is in me alone. Don't waver for a person with divided loyalty. They're an unsettled as a wave of the sea that is blown and tossed by the wind. I mean, do you know anybody with that kind of faith? Someone who seems to never waver, but they just seem to trust the Lord even in the hard times. You think, man, how do they do that? I know a few people like that. And honestly, I'm actually trying to be that person. I just hate going through the things to get there. I mean, I know I need to, but the truth is I don't like it. And truthfully, you know what? I'm more inspired by people whose faith is tested and endures than I am by people who seem to always get a yes from God. Right? I mean, the people that get their prayers answered by God, or they just seem like they don't have any problems, they don't really inspire me like people who are continually trusting God through the things that they are going through and they haven't got an answer yet, but they keep trusting God. Those people inspire me way more. And that's just because, unfortunately, the people whose prayers go unanswered, their confidence in God remains the same. And when it remains the same, it tells me there's a level of faith that I can achieve, which is huge. Because it's not fun going through trials. It's not fun going through the hard times. It's a challenge. And there are many times people want to give up and quit. Heck, there's even times where it gets so bad people take their own life because they think there's no way out of whatever they're going through. But yet you got the brother of James saying, listen, when those times come, consider it an opportunity for joy, which just doesn't sound right. But, you know, I heard this story about a guy that got sick, and, you know, it was one thing after another. His boy was in a car accident, didn't think he was going to make it. He ended up making it. After he went through that, he ended up having an organ replaced. I can't remember if it was a kidney or a lung or whatever it was. And then, you know, when you get your organs, you know, he needed an organ replaced. There wasn't one available. Finally, one comes available. He gets it replaced. Then you got to take drugs so your organ doesn't reject yourself. So in order for your organ to work, you're taking your drug so it doesn't reject you. But then at the same time, this drug ended up causing some type of cancer in this person's life. And it just seemed to be one thing after another. This guy just could not win. And so this pastor went to go visit him. And it was a few days before he passed, even though he didn't know he was going to pass. He was just not feeling the greatest. So he goes and visits him. And when he walks into his office, he sees this whiteboard. And this whiteboard says, my commitments. That's what it said at the top of the whiteboard, my commitments. And here were the 6 commitments this guy, older gentleman, put on the whiteboard during his time of sickness, during his trial. He said, number 1, I will walk with Jesus every day. I would say that's a big commitment, wouldn't you? Even when you're walking through something that's not easy to walk through and you're hurt and you're painful and you're confused and worried, all those things. He said, I'm going to make a commitment that I will always walk with Jesus every day. The second commitment he made is he said, I'm going to be grateful and I'm going to live every day to the fullest. In other words, I'm not going to allow whatever I'm going through to get me down. I'm going to take every day and I'm going to be the best that I can for that day. I'm going to be grateful for that day, and I'm going to live every day to the fullest. Number 3, he said, I'm going to bless my family with words, pictures, and videos. Knowing that his days were numbered, his thoughts were, I'm going to take as many videos, I'm going to write as many letters, I'm going to take a bunch of pictures, and I'm going to save them up, and I'm going to make sure my family has them to remember me of who I am. Number 4 was, I'll invest in my guys for the good of God's glory, not mine. So to kind of give you a little context, even in this gentleman's sickness, he wanted to do a group where, you get 5 or 6, maybe 8 guys together, and you do a book or you talk about whatever, and these guys are in your group. He said, I want to invest in my guys for the good and God's glory, not mine. So he had this totally different attitude, and it was so selfless, not selfish. He had a very selfless attitude. This guy had every right to be selfish, but he chose not to be. He chose to invest it in other people for the good and God's glory, not his own. I'm going to skip number 5, and I'm going to go to number 6. Number 6, he said, I will let people love on me. You're probably thinking, well, what do you mean you'll let people love on you? Well, if you might be like this guy, and that is when people are doing things for you, it kind of feels weird. So you don't let them do it, or you don't want them paying for something. And so finally he just got to the place where he's like, you know what? I'm going to stop stealing people's blessings. If they want to do this, I'm going to let people love on me. Whether that's do the dishes or clean the house or mow the yard or whatever errand that this guy needed and he couldn't do. Maybe it's whatever it is. He was willing to do that. But number 5 was the one that got me the most. And number 5 was, I will not give up and run out on the clock. It's funny how many people, when they're going through a really hard time, they just give up and they're just waiting for the clock to run out. I don't know what that looks like for you, but that is not, what James wants. That's not what this guy wants. He says, I will not give up and just let the clock run out. I'm going to keep fighting. I'm going to keep living every day to its fullest. I'm going to be grateful. I'm going to walk with Jesus. I'm going to bless my family. I'm going to invest in the people around me for God's glory, not my own. I'm going to let people love on me, and I will not give up. I will not quit and let that clock run out. A person who has this type of faith, or let me back up. A person who has a strong faith like this, they don't reverse the consequences of the fallen world. Just because you have a bunch of faith doesn't mean you're going to be able to reverse whatever is going on. That doesn't mean you can't get a healing. Sure, we should pray for a healing, but what if you don't ever get your healing on this earth? You're going to get your healing when you go to heaven, but what if you don't get it when you're on this earth? Are you going to give up, or are you going to do what James says, to consider it joy? This type of faith produces perseverance and a courage in the midst of this fallen world. I mean, the people who get a yes from God are the people we forget the most. Not that they're not important, and not that it wasn't a great thing that God answered your prayer, but it's the people who get a no, but yet don't give up, and they have solid faith. Those are the ones who were remembered the most. Those are the ones who are the most influential. Those are the people we remember because they just kept going through it and going through it and going through it, and they never gave up, but they never got their prayer answered. Those people have a deep faith. We got to take another break. When we come back, I'll wrap this up, and we'll see you here in just a minute. All right, we're back from the last break. We're going to go ahead and wrap this radio show up with a little more information here. And right before the break, I was talking about how the people that get a yes from God are the ones we forget more easily than the ones who don't get a yes and don't give up and have a solid faith. Those are the ones we remember the most. Those seem to be the ones that have a lot of influence on people's lives because we're amazed that somebody can have that much faith in a God who gives us all these promises. But what you need to remember is God will use what he chooses not to remove. And James says in verse 12, he says, for those people that don't give up, for those people that consider it joy, for those people that continually go through the trials but always make God number one, that always are grateful and give 100% and think of others before themselves and still live out their purpose. For those people, it says in verse 12, that God blesses those who patiently endure testing and temptation. And after they've endured it, and they've made it to the end, it says they will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. I don't even know really what the crown of life is necessarily. I know there are crowns that Jesus gives us when we get to heaven as a reward, but you got to know that there's got to be a special crown for these people. These people that go through trials, these people that go through tough times, that just continue to keep fighting and trusting God, believing in God, reading and praying and going to church and serving and loving their families and acting like there's nothing wrong, even though they're dying or even though they're in their major pain, those people should get a special reward in heaven. And I believe they do. I know that through this, God values and uses persevering faith, a faith that endures, leaves its mark on the world, and it leaves its mark on the people around us. That's what real faith does. It leaves an impression on people. People remember you because of your faith, because you were still happy, because you were joyful, because you didn't stop, because you didn't give up, because you didn't quit with whatever it is that you were doing, and people recognize that. And so it left an impression, it left a mark in their life to remember who God really is and how you had the strength to get through it. I mean, we don't choose the trials, but what we do choose is the response of those trials. And so if you're going through a tough time and you need a little prayer to kind of help you get through those tough times, here's a real simple one-liner that you can use, and it just says, Lord, use this until you choose to remove this. Use it until you choose to remove it. So here it is, the whole entire verse, all read without breaking it up. It simply reads, James 1, 2 through 6 and verse 12. Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you'll be perfect and complete, needing nothing. If you need wisdom, though, because you just don't have that, ask our generous God, and he'll give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking, but when you do ask, make sure that your faith is in God alone. Don't waver, for a person with divided loyalty is unsettled as a wave of the sea that is blown and tossed by the wind. And then verse 12, when you do this, he says, God blesses those who patiently endure the testing and the temptation, and afterward they will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. Well, I really hope that is encouraging for you, because I know there are a lot of people that like to give up way too easy. I know people that go to the gym and they want those muscles to grow. They want to get stronger. They want to lose weight, but they'll go in there and they just quit. They walk out of the gym way too soon. And if you walk out of the gym way too soon and you don't push yourself to stretch that muscle, to use that muscle, whatever muscle you're building, then your muscle is never going to grow. James does not want you leaving the gym early when it comes to your faith. You allow you allow the trial to run its course. Doesn't mean you can't ask for a miracle, but just let it run its course. And when God removes it, then he removes it. But until he removes it, he's going to use it. And I just think it's a powerful comment and message because there's so many people that struggle every day, and then they end up losing their zeal for what their purpose was in life. They end up losing their enthusiasm, their passion for their marriage, their passion for the relationship with their kids, their passion for their friendships, their passion for work of what they wanted to do, their passion to serve the church. And it's a dangerous, slippery slope. There's no doubt. But believe me, we have the answer. James has the answer. He says, consider it joy. Ooh, that's tough when you're going through tough times, isn't it? It's super tough. But it's encouraging at the same time. Because right now in our world, we're going through some tough times. We're going through some times that we don't fully understand. And a lot of these things that we're dealing with right now in our country, we didn't choose. Some of you are thinking, because we're listening to a conservative talk radio show, some of you think, how in the, I didn't choose this president. I didn't choose this administration. I didn't choose these judges. I didn't choose whatever the thing is. Just put the name in it. But yet, their decisions cause us to go through things. And God says, consider it joy. Or I'm sorry, James does. James tells us to consider it joy. And that when we do that, the word consider means to rethink it, reevaluate, be positive about it. And that's the kind of life I try to live. I'm not perfect at it. But trust me, God gives me plenty of opportunities to exemplify what James is saying right here. And it's tough. Like I said, I don't always like what the Bible says. I don't always like what the Bible says to do. The Bible says to love your enemies. There's days I don't want to love my enemy. There's days that, they're not days. There's in the Bible, it says to pray for your enemies. If your enemy wants your shirt, you give him your pants. If he wants you to walk 1 mile, you walk 2 miles. You do double. It's like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to punch my enemy in the throat. I want to get on Facebook and I want everybody to know who my enemy really is. That's what we really do. That's what we really want to do. And some of you end up doing that, and that's not what God says to do. God says to pray for them. God says to forgive them. God says to let it go and let his vengeance come, not ours. I'm telling you right now, man, being a Christian isn't easy, because if it was, everybody would be doing it. And everybody would be living it out as an example if it was easy. It's not easy. It's tough. You got to work at it. And anything worth working hard for is going to be good. Anything that is given to you that you didn't have to work for, you don't appreciate it. So I hope this helps you today. I hope you were encouraged. I want you to do me a favor. I want to hear from you today. Go to my Facebook page, leave a comment on my radio show picture, whatever it is. There's a picture that always gets posted. Hey, today in so many minutes, Unfiltered, new show. Comment on that picture. Or you can text me, 314-924-4215. Again, that's 314-924-4215. Woo! Next week, I plan on having a couple of guests in the studio. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some world issues that are going on. We're going to talk about some social and political issues that are going on. We're doing a Q&A next week. I'm actually talking about this week. I'm talking about the end times. If you're in and around the St. Clair area, I encourage you to come and check us out at Roots Church. We are right off the highway at the 242 exit right there in St. Clair, Missouri, Highway 4730 at that ramp. We're right there. You can't miss us on the highway. And we're going to be talking about the end times. I'm going to be answering the question, what is the tribulation? Are we going to be here for the tribulation? And what does the timeline look like for the end times? I'm going to talk all about that this weekend, so you're going to want to come. Next weekend, we're going to have a live, unfiltered radio show right there in the church, answering any question that you may have over the series or anything for that matter. We're going to have questions that have already come in, and we're also going to do some live questions right there in the moment. Put me right on the spot and make me answer some tough questions. I'm willing to do it. I don't always like doing it because I have no idea what you're going to ask, but I'm going to be prepared as much as I can. And if I don't have the answer, you know what I'm going to tell you? I don't have the answer. I'm definitely not going to formulate something just to have an answer. So I love you guys. I hope you guys come back. Share the radio show with your friends and family. Tag someone in a post. Let them know that Unfiltered's on every single Saturday at 8 a.m. And again, the rebroadcast is on Sunday at 8 a.m. And we will see you guys next week. Peace out. Be safe. And we love you all.